Angela Bledsoe had everything to live for: a thriving career in finance, a beautiful home in Montclair, New Jersey, and a 6-year-old daughter she adored. To the outside world, she was the image of success, a woman who had worked tirelessly to build a future for herself and her child. She shared her home with James Ray III, a former NYPD officer turned high-powered attorney. Their lives were intertwined by years of partnership, a shared history, and a family they built together. But on the morning of October 22, 2018, something happened inside that home, something that shattered everything. By the end of the day, Angela was dead, shot multiple times. The man she trusted, the father of her child, had vanished. What followed was a desperate flight across borders, a chilling written account of the crime, and a trial that would grip the nation. But the story didn't end there. There was one final twist, one no one saw coming. This is the case of Angela Bledsoe. Angela Bledsoe was never the type to settle for anything less than excellence. Born and raised in the United States, she grew up in a family that valued education, hard work, and ambition. Those who knew her described her as intelligent, driven, and deeply compassionate, someone who carried herself with quiet confidence and an unwavering determination to succeed. Her journey led her to Florida A&M University, where she pursued her education with the same dedication that would later define her career. She was bright, disciplined, and focused, earning the respect of professors and peers alike. After graduation, Angela stepped into the world of finance, a demanding industry where few black women held top positions. But she didn't just navigate the field, she thrived in it. As a financial consultant, Angela built a reputation for her strategic mind and ability to guide clients through complex financial decisions. Her colleagues saw her as a rising star, someone who blended expertise with an innate ability to connect with people. She had a gift for making others feel seen and heard, whether in the boardroom or in her personal life. But Angela wasn't defined solely by her career. Friends and family recall her as a woman full of life, someone who radiated warmth and sincerity. She loved music, fine dining, and traveling to new places. She valued deep conversations and was the kind of person who made time for the people she cared about, no matter how busy she was. Above all else, Angela was a devoted mother. Her daughter was her world, the center of every decision she made. Those closest to her say she spoke often about the future, her plans, her goals, the kind of life she wanted to provide for her child. She envisioned a home filled with love, stability, and opportunity. But there was something else Angela had been planning, something she had yet to tell the world. It was a decision that would change everything. Angela Bledsoe and James Ray III had built a life together, one that, at least on the surface, seemed stable. Their relationship had spanned years, evolving from romance to a partnership that intertwined not just their personal lives, but their futures. James Ray III was no ordinary man. A former NYPD officer turned high-powered attorney, he carried himself with authority, intelligence, and confidence. To many, he was a man of discipline and control, qualities that had earned him success in his career. But behind closed doors, their relationship was far more complex. The couple shared a home in Montclair, New Jersey, raising their 6-year-old daughter. Friends described Angela as a devoted mother who prioritized her child's happiness above all else. She was hands-on, nurturing, and protective, making sure her daughter had every opportunity to thrive. But beneath the image of a loving family, there were cracks, signs that all was not as perfect as it seemed. Those close to Angela noticed a shift. She had become more withdrawn, more cautious in what she shared about her relationship. And then there was the biggest sign of all. She had started making plans for a new future, one that did not include James. She had quietly reached out to a realtor. She was considering moving out. And on the very day she was set to meet with that realtor, everything would come to a violent end. What had led to this moment? What was happening behind closed doors that Angela never spoke about? And how did a relationship built over years unravel in a single morning? October 22nd, 2018, started like any other morning in the Bledsoe-Ray household. Angela Bledsoe woke up, got ready for the day, and prepared her 6-year-old daughter for school. It was a routine she had done countless times before, one that seemed ordinary in every way. After breakfast, Angela drove her daughter to school, dropping her off just like she always did. But what no one knew at the time was that this would be the last moment the little girl would ever see her mother alive. Angela had plans that day, plans that signaled a major change in her life. She was scheduled to meet with a realtor, a clear sign that she was preparing to leave the home she shared with James Ray III. Those closest to her would later confirm that she had been considering this decision for a while. But that morning, something happened inside the house that ended those plans forever. Sometime after she returned home, Angela was shot multiple times. The details of the confrontation remain unclear, but one thing was certain: James Ray III was the one who pulled the trigger. The man she had once trusted, the father of her child, had taken her life in an act of cold, deliberate violence. The house fell silent. No neighbors reported hearing screams. No immediate calls to 911 were made. Hours passed before Angela's body was discovered. Law enforcement arrived at the scene to find her lifeless. The home she once found safety in, now a crime scene. But James Ray III was nowhere to be found. He had vanished. And what followed next would spark an international manhunt. The moment Angela Bledsoe took her last breath, James Ray III had a choice: face what he had done or run. He chose to run. In the hours following the murder, Ray did not call 911. He did not turn himself in. Instead, he began methodically putting a plan into motion. His first stop was his brother's home, where he left their 6-year-old daughter. What he told his brother in that moment remains unclear. But what is known is that he made no effort to explain Angela's absence or the horror that had just unfolded inside their home. With his daughter now out of the picture, Ray turned his focus to escape. He abandoned his life in Montclair, New Jersey, and disappeared. By the time police arrived at the crime scene and realized Angela was dead, Ray was already gone. Authorities quickly issued an arrest warrant, but Ray had planned his movements carefully. He made his way south, crossing state lines undetected, eventually reaching the U.S.-Mexico border. From there, he slipped into Mexico, evading law enforcement on both sides. His goal was clear. He was heading toward Cuba, a country with no formal extradition treaty with the United States. As days passed, a nationwide manhunt turned international. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and Interpol, began tracking his movements, piecing together a trail that spanned thousands of miles. Meanwhile, Ray kept a journal, documenting his thoughts and actions as he moved from one place to another. In one chilling entry, he wrote about the moment he pulled the trigger. Out of reaction, I fired in her direction, and it seemed like I couldn't stop firing. It was a confession, written in his own words, a glimpse into the mind of a man on the run, a man who had just taken the life of someone he once claimed to love. But Ray had made a miscalculation. Law enforcement was closing in, and his time as a fugitive was running out. On November 6, 2018, just 2 weeks after Angela's murder, Ray was finally captured in Cuba. He had nearly made it, but authorities intercepted him before he could disappear for good. From there, he was extradited back to the United States, where he would soon face the justice he had desperately tried to escape. But the real question remained: why did he do it? And would the trial finally reveal the truth behind what happened that day? As investigators pieced together James Ray III's movements during his 2-week run from the law, they discovered something unexpected: his personal journal. Titled On the Move, this collection of handwritten notes wasn't just a travel log. It was a chilling window into the mind of a fugitive. Ray had documented everything, the choices he made, the places he traveled, and most disturbingly, his thoughts on the crime he had committed. Each entry painted a portrait of a man grappling with the consequences of his actions, though never quite accepting responsibility for them. One passage stood out among the rest. Out of reaction, I fired in her direction, and it seemed like I couldn't stop firing. This sentence alone raised more questions than answers. Was Ray suggesting Angela's murder wasn't premeditated? Was he attempting to justify what he had done as an impulse rather than a calculated act? Or was this simply an attempt to soften the truth for himself, to rewrite the reality of what had happened? Forensic psychologists and legal experts analyzed his words, noting the lack of remorse. There was no direct acknowledgement of Angela as a person, no sorrow for the fact that he had taken her life. Instead, the entries seemed detached, an account of an event, rather than a confession of guilt. Throughout On the Move, Ray wrote about survival, about staying ahead of law enforcement, about navigating foreign cities. He detailed his travels across the U.S. border, his attempt to blend in, and the steps he took to avoid capture. But there was something else missing from the journal, any mention of his daughter. Not once did he write about the little girl he had left behind, the child now orphaned because of his actions. His priorities were clear: escape first, everything else second. When On the Move was presented as evidence, prosecutors didn't just see it as a diary. They saw it as a confession. It gave them a glimpse into the mind of a man who saw himself as the victim, a man who believed his only real mistake was getting caught. But Ray wasn't just a fugitive anymore. He was now a prisoner. And as his trial loomed, the question remained: would his own words seal his fate? By the time James Ray III stood before a judge, nearly 5 years had passed since the morning he took Angela Bledsoe's life. The manhunt, the extradition, the investigations, it had all led to this moment. The trial of James Ray III was about to begin. Leading up to the trial, both the prosecution and the defense prepared for a high-stakes legal battle. The state had a mountain of evidence: Angela's bullet-riddled body, Ray's immediate flight from the country, and perhaps most damning of all, his own words from On the Move. But the defense wasn't prepared to simply concede. Ray's attorneys hinted at arguments of self-defense and emotional distress, aiming to cast doubt on whether the killing was premeditated. They wanted the jury to believe that the shooting was a tragic moment of uncontrollable rage rather than a calculated act of murder. The prosecution, however, had a different narrative, one rooted in the facts. The trial took place before Superior Court Judge Verna G. Leith and lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution called forensic experts, law enforcement officials, and witnesses who painted a picture of Angela's final moments. They detailed how she had been shot multiple times, the precise locations of her wounds, and how Ray had left her there, making no effort to seek help. Prosecutors zeroed in on the fact that Angela had scheduled a meeting with a realtor the day she was killed. This wasn't just an argument that turned violent. Angela was leaving, and Ray knew it. To them, this was all the motive he needed. Then came the journal. When On the Move was introduced into evidence, the courtroom fell silent. The jury listened to Ray's own words, his own account of the crime. Out of reaction, I fired in her direction, and it seemed like I couldn't stop firing. The prosecution didn't need to spin those words. They spoke for themselves. Ray's attorneys countered with an argument that he acted in the heat of the moment, that Angela's decision to leave may have triggered an emotional response he couldn't control. They presented Ray as a father, a man whose life was unraveling, and they tried to paint a different picture of the crime, one where Angela's murder wasn't premeditated, but rather an explosion of emotions. But the jury didn't buy it. After 6 weeks of testimony, the case was placed in the hands of the jury. The deliberations lasted only 3 hours, a clear sign that the evidence was overwhelming. On that day in May 2023, James Ray III was found guilty of first-degree murder and weapons offenses. There was no gasp in the courtroom, no last-minute revelation. The outcome was inevitable. For Angela's family, it was justice. though it could never bring her back. For Ray, it was the beginning of the final chapter in his story. With his conviction secured, the next question was how severe his punishment would be. The prosecution pushed for the maximum, life in prison without the possibility of parole. His sentencing was scheduled for June 22, 2023, where a judge would determine whether James Ray III would ever see freedom again. But in an unexpected turn of events, Ray's fate would take yet another dramatic shift, one no one saw coming. June 22, 2023, was supposed to be the day James Ray III learned his fate. The prosecution had secured a conviction, and a life sentence seemed all but certain. But just 4 days before his scheduled sentencing, the case took a shocking turn, one that neither the courts nor Angela Bledsoe's family could have anticipated. On the morning of June 18, 2023, James Ray III was found unresponsive in his cell at the Essex County Correctional Facility. Medical staff were called immediately, but despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead shortly after. The cause? A sudden and unspecified medical emergency. News of Ray's death spread quickly, leaving many questions unanswered. At 60 years old, he had shown no public signs of serious illness. Was this a natural death, or did something more lie beneath the surface? The authorities conducted an investigation, but ultimately, his death was ruled as a medical event, with no foul play suspected. For Angela Bledsoe's family, the sudden turn of events stirred a mix of emotions. They had waited nearly 5 years for justice. They had sat through every moment of the trial, listened to every disturbing detail, and prepared themselves to hear Ray's sentence. Now, they would never get that closure. Angela's sister, Michelle Bledsoe, spoke out after the news broke. While she and her family had fought relentlessly for justice, she made it clear that Ray's death did not change the reality of what had been taken from them. Angela was gone. Their family would never be whole again. The legal system had been on the verge of delivering its final judgment, but in a way, nature had done it first. Some saw Ray's death as an escape, an end he didn't deserve. Others believed it was simply another chapter closing in a case that had already seen so many twists. With Ray's death, his sentencing was rendered moot. There would be no final statement from the judge, no official declaration of his punishment. While his conviction remained intact, his passing meant that the full weight of the law could never be imposed on him. For Angela's loved ones, the fight for justice had been a long and painful journey. And while Ray would never serve the sentence they had hoped for, there was one thing they could hold on to. He would never have the chance to hurt anyone again. Despite the unexpected ending, one truth remained. Angela Bledsoe's story would not be defined by the man who took her life. She was more than his crime. She was a mother, a professional, a woman who had dreams and ambitions that went far beyond the tragedy that befell her. And in the end, that is what her family chose to remember. Long after the courtroom lights dimmed and the headlines faded, Angela Bledsoe's memory remained strong. She was not just another tragic story. She was a woman who had left an undeniable mark on the world around her. Angela's colleagues in the finance industry spoke of her brilliance, her drive, and her unwavering dedication to helping others achieve financial security. She wasn't just respected, she was admired. A mentor to many, she had opened doors for young professionals, especially women of color, striving to navigate the complex world of finance. Her alma mater, Florida A&M University, recognized her achievements, with former classmates recalling her ambition, intelligence, and kindness. Angela's success wasn't just about personal gain. It was about lifting others up along the way. Above all else, Angela was a mother. Those who knew her best described how much she adored her daughter. She was actively involved in her child's life, ensuring she had every opportunity to grow and thrive. Even as she faced personal challenges, Angela's number one priority was always her daughter's happiness and well-being. Her family, devastated by their loss, made it their mission to keep Angela's spirit alive. They shared stories of her warmth, her laughter, and the way she made every gathering feel special. Angela was the kind of person who left an imprint on your heart, someone you never forgot. In the wake of her passing, those closest to her took action. Friends and family established initiatives in her name, dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence and empowering women in finance. Some of her colleagues launched scholarship programs for aspiring financial consultants, ensuring that Angela's passion for education and mentorship lived on. Community events were held in her honor, celebrating her life and the impact she had made. Her story served as both a warning and a call to action, a reminder that behind closed doors, silent struggles can exist, and that speaking up could mean the difference between life and death. Angela Bledsoe was more than the way her life ended. She was a force of nature, a mother, a professional, a woman determined to carve out a bright future for herself and her daughter. And while her time was cut short, her legacy would endure. Angela Bledsoe's story is a heartbreaking reminder of how lives can be shattered in an instant. We've explored her life, her achievements, the tragedy that took her away, and the pursuit of justice that followed. From her promising career to the devastating events of October 22, 2018, to the shocking turn of events in James Ray III's trial and ultimate death, every moment, in this case, left a lasting impact. But beyond the headlines, this story is about more than just crime. It's about awareness, prevention, and justice. Domestic violence is a silent epidemic that too often goes unnoticed until it's too late. We encourage you to reflect on the importance of recognizing warning signs and supporting those in need. If you or someone you know is facing a dangerous situation, don't stay silent. Help is available. What are your thoughts on Angela's story? Let us know in the comments below. Have you or someone you know faced a similar situation? Your insight and support could make a difference in someone's life. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dive crime stories. Check out our other videos for more real-life cases that deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching, and remember, every story has a lesson.